repeatedly. Vilma's daughter says the attacker hurled racist slurs at her mom.
F you, Asian, you don't belong here.
The suspect, a homeless man, reportedly with a history of mental illness, arrested on hate crime charges. He pleaded not guilty.
What does justice at the end of the day look like for you?
It's time to change the law so that those victims of hate crime should have a voice and should have justice in court.
Today, President Biden signing the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act.
Every time we're silent, every time we let hate flourish, we make a lie of who we are as a nation.
It's that silence that Vilma and her daughter are determined to break, sharing AAPI stories, flipping the attacker's alleged words to say, AAP, I belong.
We do belong here, and take that power away from that person that decided to inflict this horrible act on my mom.
And Juju with us here tonight. You've been so great on this topic for weeks and weeks now, Juju. Brave of the family to share this with us. We were on the air after the attacks in Atlanta. We know 8 dead, 6 were of Asian descent. But this move today will help so many of the other cases that don't get the attention that they deserve.
Absolutely, David. And we know that the Justice Department recently announced hate crime charges against that shooter in Atlanta we were reporting on. But hate crime charges are rare, like Vilma's, and today's new law is designed to change that. Vilma told me she wants to pursue justice to the fullest, but she also prayed for her attacker, literally using love to fight hate, David.
Extraordinary. And again, brave of Vilma to talk with you. We're going to have much more of Juju's interview later tonight, right here on Nightline.
Love is the most powerful thing in the world.
And today's landmark legislation.
We are committed to stop the hatred and the bias.
We're with the NYPD's Anti-Asian Hate Crimes Task Force.
Go!
Battling bigotry.
Go!
This special edition of Nightline, Am I Next? Anti-Asian Hate. We'll be right back.
Get ready for summer with Macy's Memorial Day special.
Thanks for joining us. Tonight, you're about to meet one tough yet elegant lady, a Filipina-American. Her brutal attack in Midtown Manhattan going viral, sparking nationwide outrage. Her daughter, now part of a younger generation of Asian Americans, encouraging their elders to come out of the shadows and speak up, to give others the strength to stand up against hate.
We want to start putting some tape, kind of how we did.
Elizabeth Carey is turning stories of hate into art.
I want to dedicate and honor my mom and everything she went through, but also to kind of honor everybody who's been a victim and survivor, most importantly, of these types of attacks.
These words have kept her up at night.
F you, Asian, you don't belong here, was the gist of what he had said before the attack.
Racist slurs hurled at her mom as she was beaten in front of a New York City high-rise. You Don't Belong Here turned into an art exhibit about why Asian Americans very much belong here. AAP, I Belong, a collection of stories designed to flip victimhood into empowerment.
In 50 years, when I look back on my life, well, I've said that I did everything I possibly could, and I feel like in this moment, I have.
Elizabeth's moment emerged from horror, captured on surveillance video in March.
She was kicked numerous times. She was assaulted pretty bad.
The brutal attack enraging the nation, coming to symbolize anti-Asian hate, and the callous disregard of the bystanders, seemingly emblematic of America's silence.
Damn it, I am so sick of standing here demanding something to be done for my people.
This vicious assault, just one in an alarming spike in crimes against Asian Americans nationwide.
The crime was caught on camera. Shows a man attacking the victims with a cinder block.
2 elderly Asian women were stabbed at the bus stop near 4th and Market Street.
Brutal attack on an Asian American woman in New York City.
In 16 major cities, anti-Asian hate reports to police rose more than 160% compared to the same time last year. Now, the survivor at the center of it all, Filipina-American Vilma Carey, speaking out on camera for the first time, determined to use her voice to fight hate.
There are so many victims that have not been heard.
It's Monday of Easter week. Vilma, a devout Catholic, is headed to Mass when the unthinkable happens.
I saw a text from my mom that said, "Call me, I've been attacked." And I was like, what? And she had told me, "I'm in a police car. I'm asking them to take me to the hospital. I hit my head. I don't know exactly what happened."
What was your reaction when you first laid eyes on her?
It was hard. I had never seen my mom in a hospital bed. She said, "I don't know, I remember getting hit, but honestly, I don't remember feeling the force of it."
At the hospital, the 32-year-old fashion executive learned her mom had a fractured pelvis and was suffering from head wounds.
How did she look to you?
There were visible injuries, and a lot of my time at the hospital was holding an ice pack on her head for hours.
But almost immediately, Elizabeth felt something was off.
I had thought that somebody tried to steal her purse. In all honesty, I thought that's what had happened.
You didn't think anti-Asian attack?
Never. I would have never thought that at all.
It wasn't until a friend sent her the video spreading on social media that she put two and two together.
First, I watched the video and I saw how brutal it was. And then I think I watched it 2 or 3 times after in tears and started sobbing and shaking and coming to this realization. I remember just screaming, "But that's my mom, but that's my mom." And just to watch the force of what had happened to her, I really think that someone was watching out for her from above.
So many people, when things happen in their lives, ask the question, why me?
Yes, and I've been asking some friends, why me? Did I do something wrong? What did I do to provoke that? And all they could say to me is, maybe there's a plan for you because you were spared and you're a strong woman, and maybe God is telling you do something.
40 years ago, Vilma came to the U.S. like so many immigrants, drawn by the promise of prosperity.
I work as a trade analyst at the Philippine Trade Office, Philippine Consulate in Chicago.
And I understand that not that long after you fell in love.
Yes, my husband was interested in Philippine furniture, so he called up my office and I told him to come down, and he saw me. The rest is history.
Vilma stepped away from her career to raise Elizabeth. In 2012, her husband passed away, and during the pandemic, Vilma came to New York to visit her only child.
I felt so alone. I figured, let me stay with my daughter.
She knew her way around New York and felt safe up until the moment she was attacked. Vilma says one good Samaritan made all the difference.
My mom had said there was one person said, "Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing over there?" And I'm so thankful for that because, you know, who knows where the story would have gone otherwise.
But the seeming failure to immediately respond by many of the bystanders, particularly these doormen, sparked outrage. They were eventually fired. Their union saying the workers did assist the victim and flag down police, as was shown in a longer version of the building's camera footage.
I had never feared for myself prior to my mom's attack. Now that this has happened to her, I feel it in a different way when I walk down the street.
Throughout Vilma's recovery, thousands wrote words of encouragement and prayers. The family's GoFundMe page raising nearly $300,000.
Having that kind of sympathy towards me just melted my heart.
Within days, the police arrest a 38-year-old homeless man out on parole for stabbing his mother to death 18 years ago. He reportedly has a history of mental illness.
I can only think about the mental health system. It seems like there are some people that need help in this country, and I don't know if they're able to find the resources, and I think that's definitely a big factor of what's happening right now.
It's extremely hard to prove these cases. You have to know what the perpetrator said before or after the attack.
NYPD Inspector Tommy Ng is in charge of the recently formed Asian Hate Crimes Task Force and helped investigate the attack against Vilma.
We sent a Filipino detective to her house. That the first dialogue was talking in her native language. And immediately she opens up.
She and her daughter both said that the attacker said to her, Asian, you don't belong here. Is that enough to constitute a hate crime charge?
That's absolutely enough.
Why?
Absolutely. Just because the attack was clearly motivated by her race as an Asian American.
In fact, Vilma's alleged attacker now faces 3 hate crime charges. He pled not guilty. What do you think triggered the spike in anti-Asian hate during the pandemic?
I think that certain politicians or elected officials might have said something.
The China flu, Kung flu, the plague from China, we have to be accurate.
That is driving this movement or momentum.
Give me a sense of how racism and mental instability or mental health crises overlap.
When someone says something about, who to blame about the pandemic or the virus, that it's embedded in their head that when they have these mental breakdown for some of these people, that they tend to talk Asian American.
What makes some in the Asian community shy about reporting to police?
The lack of understanding, the lack of trust, the fear of the police that, getting deportations outside of the country.
All right, come on, sir. Okay.
All right. It's my first rally.
Elizabeth is trying to bridge that trust gap.
Our generation of our elderly parents are obviously being targeted, and they are not the most open and willing to reach out.
She's convincing her mom and others in the AAPI community that their voices matter, that they don't need to be invisible.
I think my generation should listen to the new generation.
As they both continue to heal, their mother-daughter bond is giving them strength. I wonder if you think that fear creeps into your heart in a different way now?
There is fear, but if we let fear overcome all these things, then nothing will happen. We have to rise above fear, be stronger than fear, be courageous.
Go!
When we come back, how the AAPI community is fighting back, and what Vilma has to say about her assailant. Why pray for your attacker?
Quick.
I'm Inspector In, Commanding Officer, Asian Hate Crime Task Force. Thank you for coming today. Some crime prevention tips today, and then how to protect yourself at all times.
Go! 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 Go!
After leaving Hong Kong at the age of 16, Tommy Ng grew up in Brooklyn. He was robbed twice while still in school.
My part-time job was delivering food. The first time I didn't call the police, I just didn't know what to do. And I felt helpless that I didn't speak the language. I didn't know the criminal justice system of how it works and how to report to the police department.
How does that impact the way you talk to people who are victims of crime?
Oftentimes, they don't feel comfortable talking to strangers or speaking in another language.
So instead of feeling helpless, you became a police officer?
Absolutely.
Now, 25 years later, as head of the NYPD Asian Hate Crimes Task Force, he's teaching others to fight back.
I want you to bring it back to your family members, teach your children, your elderly.
Go!
Through community engagement, like this self-defense class.
We want to build confidence. We want to ensure that we are empowering them.
The task force, created last year, is comprised of 25 officers who speak 11 different languages.
Korea, Filipino, China, and they speak many languages and dialects.
Ng says anti-Asian attacks are nothing new, but he's urging victims to seek justice.
If you don't report the incidents to the police or local authority, we wouldn't know. And the same perpetrator can commit, another crime against someone else, or it could be your family members next time.
How do you fight hate as a police officer?
Education. If you start teaching our younger generations about other ethnicities, I think that's extremely, extremely important, starting at a very early age.
But in order to learn the scope of the problem, you have to measure it.
We've received over 6,600 incident reports. These are all self-reported by individuals who've experienced hate. There's no question that this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Manju Kulkarni co-founded the group Stop AAPI Hate to tally the mounting anti-Asian hate crimes during the pandemic.
It's just really unacceptable that our issues are not getting the attention that they deserve.
And there's a long history of hate crimes against the Asian American community, which remains largely invisible. One of the most significant, Vincent Chin. In the 1980s, as the American auto industry was threatened by Japanese imports, Chin, a Chinese American in Detroit, was violently beaten to death with a baseball bat after his own bachelor party by two men who blamed Asian Americans for their lost jobs.
That shows too the way in which our communities are often dehumanized, seen as perpetual foreigners.
The attackers were convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 3 years probation and a $3,000 fine. But they never served a single day in prison. Vincent's mom, Lily, spent years demanding justice.
We see so many times across cultures the mother of Emmett Till many years prior doing the same, essentially bringing voice to her son's case and showing that it was in fact a racist incident. Similarly, I think Vincent Chin's mother, working with community groups, making sure that it elicited the attention of federal authorities.
Eventually, the outrage led to federal hate crime charges, and one of the men was found guilty.
This was the first time that hate crime statute and a federal one that was used against perpetrators who committed crimes against Asian Americans.
But despite Chin's landmark case, that conviction was overturned on appeal. Which is why Vilma's case brings renewed attention to the need for a racial reckoning for Asian Americans.
What does justice at the end of the day look like for you?
It's time to change the law. Victims of hate crime should have a voice and should have justice in court.
But Vilma's also calling for healing, something she prayed for on her 66th birthday.
I told my daughter, I don't want to do anything except go to church and pray for all the blessings, pray that I'm alive and I'm okay, and pray for everyone, including even my attacker. I prayed for him.
Why pray for your attacker?
Because that's the only thing I could do for him. In the hope that maybe someday he reform. Because love is the most powerful thing in the world.
What's that like listening to your mom talk about what she's been through?
It's amazing. I don't know if I could have said the same things myself. Even watching her over the last couple of weeks, just the emotional growth of her getting to that point. I actually hadn't heard her say that. So that was also a little bit surprising for me as well. I took a different path.
Elizabeth is turning her family's pain into purpose.
Oh, I love this story.
Using a portion of the funds donated to them to put on this exhibit. It's a collection of stories, a community, dedicated, Elizabeth says, to the strongest woman she knows, her mother.
We all belong, and each one of us has to reclaim that word, because we all belong here.